Welcome to Ellevate Louisiana's December Taxation and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting. I'm Julie Stokes, founder and CEO of Ellevate. Before we begin, I want to thank our committee chairs, Phyllis Sims and Jay Calhoun, who are both with us today. Phyllis will be participating in our conversation with us today, and Jay is actually joining from a plane, so she's going to pretty much be listening in, but I really appreciate both of their leadership. And it's been a pleasure so far to work with them. Today, we are joined by Jarrod Coniglio, the newly appointed Secretary of the Department of Revenue, as well as Brandea Averett, who will be promoted to Deputy Secretary when Jarrod takes the reins on January 1st. Jarrod brings more than 20 years of leadership experience across state government, having served as the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Revenue since his appointment by Governor Jeff Landry in 2024, and having held numerous other senior roles, including being chief over Louisiana's Medicaid Program Integrity Section at the Department of Health. In addition to his public service with the state, he has also worked in banking with JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo for about 14 years. He's a veteran of the Louisiana Army National Guard. Thank you for your service, Jarrod. And holds a Bachelor of Science in Finance from LSU. Jarrod, thank you for joining us and congratulations on your appointment. We're looking forward to hearing more, so I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you for an update on what's going on at the Department of Revenue.
Thank you, Julie. So yeah, Jarrod Coniglio, and join with me Brandea Averett, that will be our deputy. So appreciate the opportunity. These are coming fast and furious, these opportunities to speak as the secretary. I'll kick it off January 1st. I think January 5th is the official date. So excited to be the next secretary. Having spent a number of years at the department, never thought I would actually get to this level. But you never know, and time elapses and you get an opportunity, and no better time for me in my career to do that. And I love the opportunity to work with Brandea. She's been around for a number of years. She's one of the architects of our tax reform that we'll touch on a little bit here today. What I want to do is talk a little bit about the changes and what's happening, upcoming in 2026, whenever the new administration, my administration, kicks off. But you can't look forward without taking a little bit looking at the past. And so I want to touch on that as well. And then, we can go from there. But let me start with the changes. In addition to Brandea, we're actually having Catherine Logan will be moving up to our Office of Legal Affairs. So Catherine right now is our legislative liaison. I'm sure many of you have dealt with her. So she's going to get an opportunity to move forward in this administration and be over Office of Legal Affairs. So that's going to be a huge opportunity for her, and I'm excited to have her in an elevated role as well.
And Jarrod.
Yeah.
Jarrod, you know that when I was in the legislature, I had the Sales Tax Streamlining and Modernization Commission.
Oh, yeah.
And Catherine actually staffed that along with Allison Pryor. So I've been knowing her for a number of years now. Excited for her opportunity.
As I've moved through, and I think even the other day, and met some of her staff and coworkers back in the she's had a pretty decent career and a lot of exposure at the legislature, which is something I haven't, or just because of the opportunities I've been given. It's mainly been running a day-to-day operations while the secretaries go there. So it's definitely an opportunity for her, but it's an opportunity for me to have her with me and Brandea as well. So looking forward to it. And for the most part, the rest of the team stays the same. There may be some changes as far as what they manage and oversee, but for the most part, that will be it going forward into January. From there, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. So Secretary Nelson and I came in January, and I remember the governor calling me and telling me that he's going to appoint Nelson as the Secretary of Revenue and me as the deputy, and tax reform was going to be the point for his appointment. That was the big thing, actually, during his gubernatorial and even legislative time he spent there. And boy, what an opportunity that he and Brandea and the others put together. So here we are today. We're at a flat 3% income tax rate. a flat 5.5% corp rate, and a number of other changes as far as exemptions that are sunsetting. I don't know if anybody watched and of course the sales tax was brought up to 5%. REC just happened the other day for the forecast, and I read the paper actually this morning, and it had a good quote that it's better than forecasted. So while their individual income is slightly down from prior years, expected because the rate has been changed, it's better than forecast. So that's actually a positive. Sales tax is actually outperforming forecast. So they actually anticipated obviously more sales tax coming in, but even doing better than the forecast. And corp is usually, lagging behind from the standpoint of this time of the year. So we anticipate seeing the rest of that throughout the rest of the fiscal year. So all in all, it's actually working out better than actually expected, or if you want to say better than forecasted.
So wait, I'm a little like on corporate tax. Did you say that it was about the same or that it was high or low?
Oh no, as far as the rate was obviously tiered, 3 tiers. It put it at a flat 5.5, but it's not the net collections aren't as high as they were in previous years, but that was expected. As long as it hits the 600 million, which is the part of the budget that goes into the general fund, the balance of that would go into, I think, the revenue stabilization fund. So right now they're forecasting, I think if I look, 900 million still for corp. So, and that was the lower of the two for LFO and DOA. So still on pace to do better than forecast, and at least the 600 million, but it's not going to be what it was in the past when we get rid of franchise tax, which is what we did.
That's what I was going to ask, if it was because of corporate income tax or if it was really because of franchise tax or a combination.
I think it was a combination. I think as Greg at the REC and even Manfred, but I think Greg spoke mostly of it. I think right now there's not a lot of real understanding of what's going on. You have the tariffs, you have the changes in franchise tax, you have other, we're going to talk about mandating estimated taxes in corp for next year, which is something we're going to do, but we don't do that now. So there's a lot of changes that are upcoming in the corp world that should result in meeting the forecast, which I think, like I said, is 900 million. 600 is the most important number, though. As long as we meet 600, that the forecast for general sale or for state general fund is met.
You said something about mandating estimated tax for corporations, but there's penalties if you don't pay estimated tax for your corporation.
Yes. We haven't enforced it in the past, but yes, starting in January of 26, we will start requiring or issuing a penalty for corporations not paying estimated taxes. Yes. And I think there will be a revenue ruling, Brandy, I think is what's in the near future.
Revenue Information Bulletin.
But it's already in the statute, so it's not it's something we're going to be mandating beginning January.
Because I thought that if you didn't pay and you were not fully paid up when you did your return, I mean, you got penalties and interest, right?
So you had an underestimated penalty that we would consider at that time, but not throughout the year. You should be filing estimated payments throughout the year, and we've not enforced that over the years.
Okay.
But we will now.
Which is a very normal thing to do. So
yes.
Yeah.
But what about there are companies that purchase tax credits and do not pay estimated taxes because they have purchase agreements to purchase tax credits. What about those companies? Will they still be penalized if they didn't pay the estimated, but they have the tax credits?
I don't think so. Brandy, you want to chime in on that? I don't think they will.
So I actually looked into this last week. I didn't find anything in the statute that specifically allows for a credit to substitute for estimated payment. But I think a lot of it's going to come down to what do you owe on your return when you go to file it. So if those credits end up, if the amount that you owe doesn't exceed the $1,000, or you've otherwise met the basic requirements, then how you got there isn't going to matter as much. But you just have to make sure if you're purchasing credits throughout the year that you don't end up in a situation where it's going to trigger us to go back and look at those estimated payments or the fact that they're not there.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So maybe we can jump in if we want to talk now moving forward. So we're also mandating or expanding our mandating of business taxes to be filed and paid electronically. So that also will begin January 2026 as well. Mainly impacts sales and withholding. So those are the big ones that we will be looking at. There are others. There's a list on our website of those, but so beginning January, all tax and withholding will need to be filed electronically, or there will be penalties assessed on that as well.
Also, it just will help y'all be so much more efficient just to be able to not be scanning and processing paper forms. So you think you'll be met with resistance on that?
None. And I'll tell you that one of the things when we came in, something that helped me over the years, this is my third time with the department, so I've kind of came in and knew exactly where to go start looking and working on and pick up some of the stuff that I left off in the past. But what we've noticed is over a 60% decrease in paper document processing. And what that has resulted in is today we're processing, it's costing us about $5 a document to process. And that's not good for the taxpayers. So we definitely needed to look at that. We had the opportunity to mandate the business taxes or expand what we've already mandated. And we didn't have any pushback when we promulgated the rule. And here we are today about to issue it. There's going to be hiccups. We understand that. But we did this in the past. We kind of have a process to go through when these returns and payments come in paper. So there will be a transition period that we will work through with, business entities that are filing or sending those documents. But we reached out to them. If you filed paper in the last 12 months, we sent you a letter. We've sent you a LATAP notification. We've done education on how to register for LATAP. All of our returns and payments are on LATAP. You can file actually outside of LATAP if you want, so you don't have to create a login. But at the end of the day, this wasn't because we just didn't want to do it. There was a business need, and 60%, and it's only getting better or worse depending on what side you're on. If you're a business, it's all going electronic. Sure, you're going to have those that kind of reluctantly want to send in those paper, but it is 60% have reduced just from the standpoint of that. Now, I will tell you, individual income will remain the same. So at the moment going forward, you can still file and pay using paper returns, individual income, and we'll address that in years to come. But that's still a paper. You can still file paper and pay paper. We don't encourage it. We give you a free file online application in LATAP, but we still recognize there are still going to be people who want to pay and file paper.
Yeah.
I think some of the other initiatives so we talked about the underestimated and filing the estimated payments on corp. We talked about mandating or the expansion of our business taxes. I think some of the other changes, and I have a little cheat sheet that I'm here, is LaDoge. So you have Doge at the federal level, and you have LaDoge at the state level. So not a lot has been, I guess, publicized about this effort that's been going on since Governor Landry had come in. It's LaDoge. So we have a number of initiatives that we are targeting and been already implementing. Two of them we just discussed, and Others, though, I'll tell you what we're headed towards that we're looking at. Like, I'll give you an example. So we eliminated tax-free shopping. So that saved about $500,000 in sales tax that was given back to foreigners for coming into Louisiana and spending sales tax. So we eliminated that program last year. What we also are doing is, so we're going to prioritize our high risk returns. What you don't see and what we're trying to move towards is a lot of AI. And we have a lot of roadblocks, necessary roadblocks to get there, because obviously you can't put personal data into the software, but we're trying to leverage it and utilize it in determining what refunds that we should be maximizing, which ones we should let go, reviewing our edits that we have. We spend a lot of time manually stopping returns, reviewing it, making a decision, and then letting that return go out. So what we're doing is trying to find a way to say, hey, this is a batch of returns or refunds that historically have yielded a lot of edits or changes. So let's stop those, and let's maybe not stop the ones that have historically not been a lot of changes. And then depending on the taxpayer, there's always post-pay. So letting a refund go out, auditing after, getting the money back if it's a seasoned, reputable business, we can go and get that after the fact. It's those ones that we're trying to, it's all about interest. So if you send it out sooner, you don't have the state paying the interest. And right now, I think the interest rate is around 11%. So it is pretty substantial for us to be paying interest on refunds when it's our fault, when we're delaying the refund from going out. So there's a big interest. I think the department pays about $7 to $8 million a year in interest for refunds. So anything we can do to save that helps us in general fund money, state general fund, which is what the Department of Revenue collects. Conduct limited scope audits. So what we found is our audits last for years, and it's complicated. We'll audit a lot of different areas. So we've learned that maybe we should focus on maybe a limited scope audit, a single issue audit. It's a shorter, concise audit. We can go in, maybe get it done within a year and be done with it. So that's something, and that is a huge transition. We have a lot of, seasoned auditors that want to do it their way, but we need to find a way to kind of get this, and that's a priority. Probably in corp and sales is the big one, is to find that limited scope audit, to try to do this in a shorter period of time. Have you heard about our closing our offices down in Texas? So I don't know if that's something that we initiated back about a year or so ago. I have to give kudos to Secretary Nelson. He saw this as a win-win for the state. A win-win meaning not the people that are working in Texas, but a win-win to bring them back to Louisiana. So we did. So we had over 40 auditors in Texas paying a monthly stipend, a housing stipend for them to live in Texas. And we've had this, if I read correctly, because I had to do some research, we've had this going on since the 60s. So we've had auditors in Texas since the 60s. It made sense. You had oil and gas there. So we had a large contingency in Houston, a large contingency in Dallas. But over time, and even COVID kind of really exposed the fact that we can do these audits without ever leaving the office. So once you realize you can do these audits without leaving the office, then you start to look at, okay, wait a minute. Why are we paying these housing stipends? Why do we have these people in Texas? Why do I have an office in Texas and nobody even leaves or goes to? Right. So in 2024 and 5, we made a decision. We didn't renew any of the offices in Dallas and Texas. That was probably a couple $100,000 a piece in rent. And those 42 auditors were domiciled back into Louisiana. So they moved to all the various locations. We have offices, mainly Baton Rouge, but we have some housed now in Benson Tower. Obviously, a large contingency went to Shreveport and Lake Charles. So we have those, at those locations. But no, we don't have any more auditors in Texas. And so the state is now saving on those as well. We've lost a lot to retirement. We lost a lot to other opportunities. So our audit staff has need some retooling. So we will be trying to coordinate with the colleges to try to bring on some auditors. Something else I'll talk about is our calls. The department receives on average 500,000 calls a year. Now, I don't know if that's a lot, depending on your referencing, but that's a lot for a department, a state department in a civil service environment to handle. And these aren't mostly, they're complex calls. So we have about 30 agents that handle various types of calls, and they're kind of good at all of them, business and individual. But what we learned back years ago, and it went away with the prior administration, and it started to come back, is tier one. So we have a tier one call center that we have maximized. So now all of our calls go to tier one. They triage it, and then they'll forward it or transfer it to the appropriate department. Now, where that's a benefit is a lot of calls is, where's my refund? They file the return. They want to know where the refund is in like an hour. So we have to deal with that. I hope in the future AI will take care of that. Just answer a phone call, be able to look into Delta, our tax system, and pull out that information. We are not there today. We probably will not be there tomorrow, in maybe a year or two. We have to get through a lot of IRS hurdles to just allow that to happen. But the functionality is there. The functionality is there for AI to answer, where's my refund, which is a good portion of those phone calls. That would save the state having to deal with paying a tier one to answer those calls, because we need to do a bet. We answer about 95% of the calls that we get. So that's only about 5% don't get answered. But then you have to manage, how do you manage those calls when they come in? So one of the things is AI is a golden opportunity. I hope before I leave here that we've accomplished that. So that was something we're working on in the future.
Well, I was just gonna say if you wanted to, because I was just kind of letting you roll. But if you want to talk about like what you see as the uses of AI in the future, I think that might be good.
So yeah, I think the usage that we are exploring is the refunds. So as these refund requests come in, being able to manage those better than we do now, even to a point of making a decision and then letting that refund go out using that. Now that doesn't seem like that's a big deal, but it is, because you're dealing with very complex tax returns, very complex taxpayers that have to stop. So these returns are often stopped and delayed for months. So we're having to continuously work through that. So I would think better opportunity for refunds. I think the second thing is audits. What we found is over the years, we seem to audit the same taxpayer for the same thing year over year over year, audit after audit after audit. I think it would be interesting if people realize that our audit coverage is probably less than 1% of the total amount of taxpayers that are out there. And that's average, by the way. That's not unique to Louisiana. That's consistent across all state revenue departments. So if we can just increase that by 10 or 15%, the amount of voluntary compliance would increase. So the amount of people that we are not identifying today paying voluntarily tomorrow. So I think of AI as let's identify, how do we get these data sources that are out there and identify audit leads that are not hitting us today? And I think if in addition to those taxpayers that we know about, how are we going to audit them in a different way to maximize those results? Something that we struggle with is what we call a no change audit or a zero audit. So we spend time and resources auditing a taxpayer, whether it be individual or business, mostly business, and we get to the end and there's no change. That's a concern. We have to find a better way to do that. AI, I think, can help us do that. So not only on the customer service side, but also on the actual operational side in the audits and refunds.
Yeah, so is that to say that maybe AI could help you not select those people that don't have changes, or maybe
Absolutely.
help you find changes that maybe the eye isn't seeing, or
Absolutely. I think the first part that you mentioned, it's learning. So it's learning from previous audits that we've done that had no change. How do they actually get into an AI type of software or system to where when we pull these audits, it tells us the likelihood of a no change. Hey, maybe it turns into a desk review where there's just a letter that goes out for a response that no human touches. That would be helpful today instead of the prep work to do an audit and then sending it out. So yes, we're looking at it to be more efficient. I don't think it's going to necessarily reduce the number of auditors, but it's going to definitely maximize those resources because you being a former legislator, you probably know this, and it's always been a kind of a point of contention with me is the legislature always that this whole setup is based on how much we can save in the budget, but not how much we generate. It's if you give me more auditors, I can generate way more money for the state, but it's more concerned about, well, how much does auditors cost? One would think if I can generate, let's say, $5 million an auditor, the state would give me 20 auditors and I can continuously generate money, but it's not. I don't get that, right? It's always the budget side that we get hampered on. So we get credit for saving money, but we don't get credit for generating money.
yeah, it is a tricky business in government. How revenue
Very much.
generation, in a fiscal note, you need to know the dynamic nature of like what's going to come in as a result of spending. But then I always said, everybody would always say that you should run government like a business. And I said, well, you got to remember that in a business, everybody wants revenue. And in government, it's a political question as to whether you want revenue or not.
It's always, I find it interesting that when I say get credit, I mean, we will get applauded if we find $1 million of savings in our budget. But if I
Mm-hmm.
tell the legislature or, that just give me 10 more auditors and I'll generate you $100 million more dollars. Well, no, they don't want to do that. They're more worried about the $100 million in my budget. And
Exactly.
it's just unique. That's not unique to Louisiana. That's unique to
No,
all, just the way the process works.
for sure. Absolutely. And politics being in it,
Yes.
it is.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. That's the game. That's the process. That's the sausage making, right?
Oh, yeah, because in the end, no legislator really wants to be the one that voted to bring in 100 more auditors so they could audit people.
Oh yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
know, I know
And
it's
by the
tricky.
way, you could take this same thing. I don't and look at DCFS and how many social workers they may need, or how many people in Medicaid these. So revenue is no
Yeah, for
different. And
sure.
having been in these other agencies, there's always you give me more people at program integrity, I'll find way more fraud. Just give me more people.
Mm.
There's always a
Right.
balancing act that you have to balance.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's another initiative. This was something that I can't wait to, I think it's going to get, I've read that we're going to have it implemented in January. And your audience might go, I assume you did that, but we didn't. So we get a lot of return mail, and a lot of our taxpayers, business and individuals, complain they didn't get the mail. So we'll send things to them. It'll become delinquent. It becomes enforceable. Enforceable meaning we can suspend driver's license, offset refunds, etc. What we were doing in the past is unless you checked the box on the envelope, unless you notified us of a change of address, even if there was a change of address on it, we would not acknowledge it. So what we're doing is now if there is a change of address, regardless if you check the box, we're changing that address in our system to be your new address. And hopefully that's going to reduce return mail, calls, and taxpayers that's frustrated their license got suspended in this case, if we did an enforcement. So something small that seems small is huge. The amount of return mail we get is incredible, the amount of mail we get. And we have to send it mail. So to get these things to warrant status, as we call it, or to enforcement status, we have to send it by mail by statute. So there's no change in that. We have to send the mail. Now we're going to ask you to file it electronically when you come to pay, but we do have to send mail, and it mostly comes back to us. So we're going to hopefully change this. It's going to change in January to hopefully get a better result going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. That you would think that, I mean, you would think that that is something that would happen, but what was the check the box that somebody had to check the box on their return saying that they had
Oh, a box that says address change, just a simple our address has changed, and then we would activate and use that. But we did recognize that there were changes of address on the envelope or on the return that we just acknowledge because of the fact that they didn't say change my address. But it's because they probably didn't mark the box. So we're going to move forward with that a little bit differently.
If you don't decide to move until after you filed, and you're not thinking about going back and changing it, so that's a good idea.
And we're going to have somebody on the other end that didn't want it to be changed, and we'll address that. But the vast majority of them wanted it changed, and we're going to act on that going forward.
Yep, good. So what about what kind of, the only thing left, I think, that you guys would want to work on in terms of tax reform that's just sticking out in my head anyway is sales tax. Is there going to be any effort toward any of that? And I guess that wouldn't, well, yeah, there's some things that could be done this year, but this year or next.
When you say sales tax, you're talking about the rate, or are you talking about some of the exemptions,
So
or
aligning
to the base?
aligning the base and streamlining collections.
We will have a seat at the table. So if there's momentum that there's to get that done, we would surely be a seat at the table and provide our guidance. Absolutely. Yes.
But there's no specific efforts being looked at to start doing any of that at this point.
Nothing more than the same conversations, even back whenever you were a representative, the same conversations, same players, same people. So they continue to have those conversations. I think today, the software, the logistics, the technology is even more advanced than even just 10 years ago to have something. So we would definitely be a seat at the table if that happens.
They asked and said we need digital products guidance in a form other than for the FAQs. And I guess that's
we
just
issued something. Brandea, you may want to touch on that. I thought we issued something just last week, I think, on digital products. On that, Brandea?
We are working on rulemaking for the digital product exemptions. The statute requires us to start that rulemaking process by the end of the year. So I think that NOI should be published this week in the December register. So I'm not sure, Jay, if you mean something other than the exemptions themselves, but we do have that NOI. That's the big thing. So yes, we do have that NOI coming out.
Excellent. And Julie Harris had asked, will AI have the capacity to help with the most complex audits of high income individuals and corporations that are probably, just very complex? I mean, I would think not quite yet, but hopefully someday in the future, right?
Yeah, I think hopefully someday in the future. I think it's too soon. Here's what I don't know. I don't know when we will have the opportunity to bring it to the Department of Revenue, because you have so many obstacles to clear with the IRS and 1508. Just, being able to put taxpayer information in one of these models. But to suggest that AI couldn't do it that's not the issue. It's really the security in getting there. So once we start to get through that, we're waiting for federal government guidance, state guidance. I think right now the early stages is going to be on customer service and just kind of helping us with audit selection. We touched on that back in 2015, but it was too many false positives. It didn't result in what we wanted in finding those leads. But technology is so advanced today. I hope it's here before I'll retire. But it's coming. It's available. I can tell you it's available. But we're not there yet with the department. I can tell you, so don't need to be concerned about it today. And we'll obviously give notice if we ever get to that point. Can I mention one other thing
Of
that
course.
we talked about? And I'd really like for the audience to give us feedback is we call it our plain language rewrite. So our billing letters have become just 2 to 3 pages worth of information. It was very confusing. So the feedback I got from LCPA or CPAs and attorneys is, I mean, they don't understand it. They don't know what to pay. What we've done is we've taken a document that was as little as just 2 pages. Our simplest document, our simplest notice was 2 pages. We've consolidated it into 1 page, and it's simple. Here's what you owe, here's why you owe it, and here's when it's due by. And we try to direct them to the website to pay online. Those are going to be rolling out in January, the first phase of that. So I'd be curious to get some feedback, as we probably will from this group, how those are being received by your clients and the people who listen, because that's a huge initiative for us to not only have them pay what they owe, but have them not call to find out what's it about.
Yeah, exactly. Do we have anybody that's received some of those letters or on behalf of a client or
I don't
personally?
think any of them went out. I think the first phase should be going out in the next week to 10 days. So whatever those are, those will be sent out, and they will start to see a difference in that.
Yeah, well, that'd be exciting because I know that it's one thing for a CPA to see some of those letters, and sometimes you're still trying to decode what it all means. But for a layperson, I think it would be very difficult. So I think that's a good initiative for
And
sure.
also one throw out is third party access and LATAP. So while we're sitting here talking about all this electronic filing, these mandates on estimated payments, what I would suggest is making sure that if you're a CPA and you have multiple clients, you have third party access, because you then can see what your clients are getting. And we really want to promote that as much as we can. And we're improving that functionality as well. We didn't even talk about the website and all the changes we've made to that over the last 12 months.
Thank you for coming to talk to us today. And at this time, just to check in with our committee members to see if any questions they might have. How does the Department of Revenue evaluate and administer tax incentives for large incoming corporations like Meta and Google to ensure compliance, transparency, and that projected fiscal benefits such as infrastructure and long-term revenue are actually realized over time? And I know that they're kind of taking the Department of Revenue out of that, right?
Yeah, you bring that. When I was reading that and you were saying, I was like, that's an LED. So a good portion of that is LED. We'll help administer it, find the calculations, the tax, and make sure it's applied correctly. And if they're an exemption, we'll grant the exemptions if it's an incentive. But the majority, the return on investment, if you will, the sales pitch is handled at LED. Now we do work closely with LED, but the question, majority of what that is an LED question.
Well, and that's one thing that I always thought was I understood the rationale for making everything a tax credit or a tax exemption. But in the end, you don't have control over your economic development and who you offer it to quite as nicely as you do as if it's grant programs.
Yeah.
And when we're experiencing financial problems, everybody's just trying to go after the tax exemption budget. And in the legislature, they'll sit down behind the scenes and be like, okay, we've got $8 billion of tax exemptions. Which ones are we going to get rid of? And I did see when y'all talked about at the LCPA conference about one of the first ones that everybody wanted to go after because it was big dollars was the S corporation exemption. And it's like, no, we don't want to go after that because that's like double. You don't want to tax somebody because of their business structure twice. But it was always kind of a struggle. And now a lot of those tax exemptions that were being used for economic development are going to be completely handled at LED Or are they going to be more like grant programs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you have some that have already sunset. So the application needed to be in before July 1st of this year. But yeah, the ones that will remain, obviously those need to continue to pay out or have still on the books. But the ones that continue, yes, there will always be. Seems like it's always about, the area that you're the expert in. So they don't want to get rid of that incentive, but they're willing to get rid of another incentive or reduce another incentive. But yeah, I think that's going to continue to be a conversation going forward is what do we do with the ones that are remaining? How much are still out there? Are they returning a good return on investment? Absolutely.
Exactly. Did anybody have any questions?
I have another one. So I know
Phyllis?
there are some states that put their audit manuals on the site. I don't believe Louisiana is one of those. Is there any plan to put the audit manual on the site for taxpayers?
I'm not opposed to it. Andrew Perilou is over our audit. I'd be more than happy to kind of spend some time with him and find out, Phyllis. But it hadn't crossed my desk. I hadn't even thought about it. Good question, though. It's a great takeaway because I definitely would look into that.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, Jarrod, and also Brandy, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. And for everyone listening, we appreciate your engagement and hope you have a great rest of your day. If you're interested in these types of policy talks, check us out on Ellevate Louisiana's website, where you can learn more about our events, our policy committees, advocacy efforts, and how to join. That website is ellevatela.org, ELLEVATELA.org. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it.